And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore, where we never. So now we are your hosts, Andy and CD. What is going on today? We are talking about some of our favorite positional groups, some of those rooms around the country on the offensive side of the ball that are our favorite and that we wanted to talk about. Is this a ranking, CD?
No, it's not a
No.
ranking. It's
You
teams
know
that we
why?
want to highlight for spring.
Maybe one of these times. I don't think we've ever had rankings. We've had drafts, right? But like rankings to me, it's difficult because everyone has a different opinion. And also too, like not every team that I rank I want to talk about. On a particular day like today, maybe I want to talk about Ohio State,
Yep.
you know? Maybe I want to do that. Also, too, we wanted to make sure that we included some sneaky teams because they're maybe not the best positional groups in the country based on the structure of their roster and, what they are as a team. But definitely some rooms that we wanted to talk about and want to get your guys' input on it as well. So make sure if you guys are watching the video, you like the content, like the video, it's a simple rule that we have here. Okay. Please let us know in the comments. Hey, what are some other sneaky teams? What are your favorite positional groups around the country? What running back rooms are awesome? What wide receiver rooms are awesome that we didn't talk about? Let us know, please. Of course, I mean the subscriptions the last week have been pretty nuts. I think last video I said, hey, we're almost at 230. Could you get us there? I mean, soared past that. Soared past that. Keep helping us out. Keep pushing that like button or that like button, that subscribe button, and sharing these videos if you're on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, we love you as well. But I would also just encourage you to check out the YouTube channel. I would encourage you. Production level, we said it before, it's gone up the last couple of weeks. It has. It has.
Hmm.
We're on the up and up. So, but we do love you there on Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating if you really like the content, and also give us a review as well. Uh, Let us know what you think. So, CD, I'm going to turn it over to you. When you were putting this together, like these list of teams, right, that like trying to define the best positional groups around the country or ones that you want to talk about, what were you looking for?
So yeah, pretty simple. I'm glad we're defining this here. Depth is a very important one because you can look around the country and you can look at pick a position, wide receiver, and take whoever you want at wide receiver. This guy's the best wide receiver in the country, but he's got nobody else around him, and so that room would maybe be a little bit more diminished, just because the overall depth is not quite there. And so I want to reward teams like quarterback. Like you could love Carson Beck, right? And I like the future of Georgia's quarterback room. I like Gunnar Stockton. I like Ryan Pulaski, but the overall depth there to me, like in 2024 and beyond, is not quite enough to get into the top tier of our video here. So you look at teams, immediate impact, high end starters, depth if something goes wrong, and then also like teams that like you could tell they made an effort to really build this room and also going to be featured in the X factors almost of their respective teams and schemes offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I know that some of you guys are going to disagree with some of the things that we have to say. I we have thick skin. We have thick skin.
Let
So
us
just
know.
just let us know. Just let us know. And I have a feeling let's get into the first one actually right away because I think people are going to disagree with us big time. All right. Let's talk about the Ohio State quarterback room. Okay. Let's talk about it. Okay. It's very polarizing because there are a lot of Will Howard haters out there. A lot of them. A pretty nutty amount of them. Considering that USC was in the market for him, Nebraska was in the market for him, and a team like Ohio State was in the market for him. Miami was in the market for Will Howard. Clearly, there was a need for all these teams, and also he must be an upgrade, right? If Ohio State is forcing out Kyle McCord and bringing in Will Howard, it must be some sort of upgrade, right? I think he's really good. What are your thoughts on Will Howard?
I think first of all, he just brings a dimension to this offense that they were missing last year, like with the legs that he brings. And Ohio State has thrived historically on mobile quarterbacks that can add different dimensions to the running game. Yes, like recently, Brian Hartline's done an unbelievable job with Ohio State. You saw what CJ Stroud did. You saw what Justin Fields did. But it's with elite wide receiver play. But historically, like when they're at their best, they're playing really good defense and they are running the ball whenever they wanted to. You saw those best Urban Meyer teams, Carlos Hyde, Ezekiel Elliott, those teams could just run the ball. And I think Will Howard brings that dimension along with Chip Kelly, an improved O-line from last year. You bring the addition of Quinn Jenkins. You're obviously making an effort to run the football and build it around Will Howard and Devin Brown, two of your older veteran guys on the roster, were very, very mobile and athletic. Like you said, if Will Howard's good enough for Lincoln Riley, he's good enough for me. Ryan Day, another guy I absolutely trust with his quarterback evaluation, right? And to me, what I love about this room, and I absolutely agree that they're on this year. I think they are actually the best room. And it's weird to say that because there's a huge competition here. And like, yes, you think Will Howard's going to win it, but Devin Brown's also still there, and Julian Sain's turning hands right now. So like, it's weird to say that this is the best room in college football. But to me, it's that competition that makes it so, so good. I mean, you've got five blue chip guys that any program, I think, would be 90% of 95% of programs would be really happy to have in their position group, quarterback wise. Will Howard, a guy, ton of experience. Devin Brown, a guy, ton of potential that they literally, I mean, he's there, he's still there. So they must believe in him, his development. He's been hurt for extended periods of time. I thought at one point he was going to win the job over Kyle McCord.
He was hurt in the spring
Obviously,
last year. That kind of set him back.
exactly. And he got hurt during the season when they were going to bring him as a red zone type of threat there. And I'm a big fan of Lincoln Kienholz. I know the bowl game was not friendly to him, but I got out of South Dakota.
No.
You knew it was going to take time. He was not ready for that game. Their O-line gave him no chance. He had no chance in that game. To me, I think if he ends up at Ohio State, awesome. If he ends up somewhere else, he's going to be really, really good. But right now, where it stands in spring, I think as your third or fourth guy, that's incredible. And obviously, not to get to the two true freshmen, Julian Sain and Aaron Nolan, guys that are top seven, right? Quarterbacks, Aaron Nolan probably around that 7 mark, and Julian Sain was your 1 or 2, depending on who you asked. So, yeah, to me, this room, I just it doesn't surprise me that Ohio State is able to stockpile talent, but to do that in 2024 with 5 elite blue chip prospects and molds as you can develop,
Glad you said
pretty darn
prospects
impressive.
and molds.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's just it.
Yeah. I mean, and I want to, there's probably someone who's listening to this video that heard you say, oh, that you absolutely trust Ryan Day's quarterback evaluation. And then they immediately thought to themselves, well, what happened with Kyle McCord? If you guys remember that recruiting cycle, that was COVID.
Yep.
None of those kids played their senior season or all of it, right? Like there was that cycle in particular was a very tough evaluation, and a lot of those 5-star quarterbacks, they go into their senior year and they're fine anyways. But also, if you remember, Kyle McCord was with a guy named Marvin Harrison Jr. in high school. Maybe had something to do with some of his success there, but in the state of Pennsylvania. But I'm not letting that stop me from trusting Ryan Day and his quarterback evaluations. Also, too, like Kansas State's offense was really good last year. Now, was a lot of that reliant on the run game? Yes, but some of the run game was Will Howard. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
Avery Johnson. All right, we get it. Okay. But I thought on that offense, like he did really well. Will Howard did very well. And I thought he did a good job throwing the ball. I mean, if you look at the metrics, his yards per completion, yards per attempt, like wasn't super high, as high as you might want it on a team like Ohio State, where you're going to have absolutely nutty weapons. And we'll talk about the weapons in a second, but um, he did a good job captaining that offense, I thought. Probably should have won the Texas game if you were watching that game. Um, in the Missouri game, he gave his team a chance. I thought he was going to win that game. Just that Missouri team was really, really good, kind of a team of destiny last year. And I think Will Howard can win you a national championship
Yeah.
at Ohio State. He's not going to win you a national championship everywhere, as we've seen at Kansas State. But at Ohio State, he can win you a national championship.
Yeah. No, I love the fit. I mean, I liked it when he went to USC. I thought that was going to be super interesting. Again, it's similar. Like Riley has had a lot of success using the quarterback run as a threat there. To me, Will Howard, his legs are the best part about him, but he still has a nice arm. Like he's big. He stands in there. He's got a nice throw. And then, like you said, the weapons, right? If you are a college football fan, which I'm assuming you are if you're watching this video, and you're active on Twitter and whatnot, or even YouTube, TikTok, you've seen the Jeremiah Smith stuff, right? If you're a Ohio State fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How he is just unbelievably somehow outperforming his #1 overall prospect already in spring practice. He got rid of what the black stripe, I believe, is what it is for Ohio State, which is like freshmen to earn their spot on the team, and he did it before anyone's really ever done it historically. And obviously, Mecca Buka comes back. You've got the two running backs, Chip Kelly, just throw in there for shits and gigs. You've got two other 5 stars, Brennan Innes and
Carl Tate.
Carnell Tate. Thank you, just for fun to be thrown in there. So it's I know you have to replace Cade Stover, right? But and obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not going to discount that at all. He was a massive focal point of your offense, and just Common Core kind of just zeroed in on Marvin Harrison whenever he wanted to, which is smart for the most part. But to me, I think it rounds out the offense this year. It's going to be a little bit more rounded than it was last year, and part of that's because of Will Howard.
Let's move on.
Yes.
Let's stay in the quarterback realm. Let's talk about Oregon's quarterback room. Now, I think people are going to be more agreeable with us on this sort of evaluation, saying that Oregon's quarterback room is one of the best in the country is not a hot take at all. It starts with Dylan Gabriel, right? Who you would anticipate being the starter next year. Fantastic job at Oklahoma last year, and fantastic
Oh
job at
yeah.
UCF. I mean, what are we talking about here? Yeah, sure, he didn't. At times, he didn't throw the ball insanely effectively, but the the role that Dylan Gabriel is going to play at Oregon is going to be a very similar role that Bo Nix played at Oregon, and I think it fits really well. They're both not. I mean, Bo Nix is not the. Is he that big of a quarterback size wise?
No, he's bigger than
He's bigger
Gabriel,
than
but he's
Dylan
not
Gabriel,
he's not Will
obviously.
Howard at all.
No, no, not at all. But Dylan Gabriel's got enough of an arm. He's a good enough athlete. He has a ton of experience, just like Bo Nix did heading into that year with Oregon, just as he did. I think he can get that job done there. But it doesn't end. It does not end with Dylan Gabriel there. Dante Moore coming over from UCLA, 5-star recruit from state of Michigan. I was really high on him last year heading into the season, even as a true freshman. And part of the reason that I took UCLA's over last year is because I anticipated him starting and I anticipated him like exceeding, which is a tough ask. How many true freshman quarterbacks go in there and actually excel at a high level? It's tough. And that offensive line he was playing behind was abysmal. It was abysmal. And Oregon's offensive line next year, even with the loss of a couple of those guys, should still be pretty solid. A definite upgrade over to UCLA. Not to mention, I mean, uh, we're not going to talk about it today, but one of the best position groups in the country is also that wide receiver room for Oregon. So uh, he's got a lot going for him, and Dante Moore, and then just for kicks, like who knows? Is Austin Novosad going to stay there?
I'm sure people are and I hate to accuse people of tampering in 2024 of college football, but I'm sure there are a lot of scouting rooms that have circled Austin Novosad as looking in that room like, hey, maybe this is a guy that potentially wants better suited elsewhere where he's got a more clear path to playing time. But again, yeah, like you said, just throw him in there. Another guy, high 4-star, coming out of high school, a guy that Oregon flipped late in the cycle from Baylor, and which was massive after Dante Moore originally flipped from Oregon to UCLA. They went back and just snagged Austin Novosad just literally like
Casually.
days after, which was incredible. And then obviously now you have both of them on your roster. Incredible. Austin Novosad's a guy out of high school, uber athlete, ran the hurdles and the jumps. And to me, if you're doing that at the quarterback position, to me that's super impressive. Oh yeah, and by the way, he played in Texas 6A football, so that's nice. That's nice to hear too. Or they're in Drippens Springs, Texas. So yeah, I love the room. And to me, this is another one, or this is one that I feel like is pretty common knowledge. And what's super impressive is you lose a first round quarterback, a guy who broke the completion percent passing record a year ago, a guy with a bajillion starts in college football, and you just follow that up and revamping your offense and your quarterback room with a guy that's another great fit with Will Stein and Dan Lanning and Dylan Gabriel, and then to not only like secure the short term but the long term future of this room, and that's exactly why they are in this because maybe Dylan Gabriel is not the top 3 quarterback in the country, right? If you're doing a fantasy draft and you want to pick quarterbacks who you want, but the fact that you can do that and stack quarterbacks in the same transfer portal class a year after getting another highly rated guy like Austin Novosad is super impressive and has to be very comforting. Like Will Stein sleeps well at night knowing that for the next 3 years, next 2, 3 years, he has his quarterback position not settled, but looking pretty darn good.
So let me ask you this. W would you say the biggest loss is the quarterback position? Like, was Bo Nix the biggest part of that offense last year that they're losing, or is it other spots? Is it
Well, I mean, I know you're setting me up here because you know how much I love Bucky Irving, right? I love Bucky Irving, but you're losing a bunch of other pieces as well.
Troy
Jackson
Franklin?
Powers Johnson, Troy Franklin, very elite, high end starters for you last year that are going to be high profile draft picks in this upcoming NFL draft. And obviously, it showed with all the success Oregon had last year. Even though they didn't win or make the playoffs, but they still had a massive year in year two of Dan Lanning. But yeah, I don't want to diminish the loss of Bo Nix. This is going to be a massive loss, but the fact that you could replace him with almost like a lefty, little shorter Bo Nix, and to me,
That's what I'm
that's a
saying.
compliment for Dylan Gabriel and what he can do. And then yeah, and by the way, it was brilliant because instead of taking a quarterback out of high school, right, in this year's class, they just took Dante Moore, which is basically a redshirt sophomore, redshirt freshman to pair with Novosad. So yeah, and it's a guy with you like him. The tools are there. It's a reason why you and many others were so high on him coming out of high school, and he got nice playing time, right? And it wasn't great all the time, but showed flashes, and you just throw him in there. Yeah. Hey, what's the expectation for Dylan Gabriel this year? You think? I mean, obviously, he doesn't have to break the passing completion percentage record for it to be a successful year, but he's thrown for 3,500 yards in most of his years in college. Do you expect the same here in Oregon?
Yes, I do. I do. Now, this was a top five offense last year. Will it be top five offense? I don't know. That there's going to be a strength of schedule difference playing those defenses in the Big Ten. We'll see how he goes, right? We'll see how he handles that, obviously. But the reality is, too, like when I'm looking at teams, like when I want to bet over on win totals, too, it's like if I feel good about them and they have a good set of backup quarterbacks, if that starting quarterback gets hurt, you just feel that much better about it. This quarterback room is very, very good. It's very, very good. Very good. It's very, very good. Let's move on here. Let's stay in the quarterback vicinity. Let's talk about Texas A&M's quarterback room. And uh, I can
There are
already
people scoffing right now. There are people scoffing right now, which is fine. You just don't know. You don't know yet. We're trying to
just
warn
listen.
you.
Just listen. Okay. Connor Wigman is a top five quarterback in the SEC. Easily, I think, next year. Is that crazy?
No. And by the way, by the end of the year, I firmly expect him to be top three in that category. Same tier as Carson Beck, same tier Garrett Nussmeyer will be in, stuff like that. Jackson Dart, I guess if you want to throw him in there.
I would say Jackson Dart for Garrett Nussmeier. But yeah,
I
and
like
it doesn't end with Connor Wigman either, right? We talked about what makes a quarterback room really good is depth. I mean, we've seen the depth. I mean, Jalen Henderson played well. He played well, man. Played well in this time. He's a big guy. He's kind of mobile. He's got a sneaky good arm. He's got good weapons around him. A lot of the same pieces from last year that he was used to using, right? Just going to be a different offense, of course. Same pieces, different player moving them on the chessboard. And then let's go to the third string quarterback. Let's go to Marcel Reed, who played in the bowl game when Jalen Henderson went down in that first play of the game, pretty much. Marcel Reed was awesome. That's a guy who they flipped late from Ole Miss. They didn't get the quarterbacks that they wanted in that draft class or in that recruiting
including
class.
it was Austin Novosad.
It was Austin Novosad, among others, and Eli Holstein also as well. Uh,
That was
but
early in the
like,
cycle. He flipped the Bama.
yeah. So what a great take by A&M. Marcel Reed is good. He looks good when I watch him practice. He doesn't necessarily. He's not filled out the same way that Jalen Henderson is, but Marcel Reed, he's got a really good arm. I mean, he threw for like 300 some yards in the bowl game, and it looked
He was
awesome. Like we saw a lot of
20
backup
for
quarterbacks.
33, 361. Now everybody kind of moved the ball in Oklahoma State last year at time for the most part.
Yes,
But the fact that you could throw in there, and he was not supposed to start that game. On the first drive, what Jalen Henderson went down with an injury, right? And Marcus Reed was like, hey, you started the year as the fourth string because Max Johnson was on that team last year as well. You started the team as a 4th stringer, and now you got to play in the bowl game. And you're playing. without Evan Stewart, and you're playing with some weird O line shuffling,
Like four scholarship receivers that game.
and you're knowing that your defense. And by the way, then well, someone got hurt too, and you knowing that your defense is super super shorthanded, and so you got to score every possession, and they move the football.
Yeah, didn't win the game, but they moved the football. So that's what I feel good about. You got Connor Wigman, who could be a top tier quarterback in college football next year. Could be. And you're like, oh, the injuries, whatever. Okay, sure, fine. Then look at the backups, right? Let's look at the whole, let's look at the quarterback room as a whole. And I don't know if you could name me, I don't know if you could name 10 better quarterback rooms than there is at Texas A&M. I don't know if you could do that. So really like that quarterback room there. And to boot, this isn't an offensive coordinator discussion, but there's a clear upgrade there at the offensive coordinator, or you would like to believe that there's an offensive coordinator upgrade there. So uh, it will be
And
interesting having everyone in that room having to learn a new offense, but they're gonna be doing it together. And also to boot, Miles O'Neill, true freshman, is getting a lot of hype. It's getting a lot of hype. Now he's not on campus yet, which is fine. No big deal. But that could be another player to watch out too in that quarterback room for years to come. So you like to see it's hard to stack talent in the quarterback room these days, and Texas A&M has done that. So credit to them.
yeah, no, did they take two quarterbacks this year? A&M?
I don't think so.
It was just O'Neal. Okay, regardless, still a pretty good take there. But yeah, like you said, a nice little parting gift from Jimbo Fisher to get you Marcel Reed, and then Bobby Petrino to get you Jalen Henderson. Nice last offseason. So yeah, absolutely. And also I think you're also upgrading, like your O line is upgrading, like not only like the players but your coaching staff. You're going from Adazio to Cushing, and by the way, we've broken down the whole A&M coaching staff on our channel as well. So feel free to check that out as well. But yeah, I think there are a lot of Connor Wigman truthers, right? There's a good amount, and for a guy that has not played a ton of football like he has, it's pretty telling that like a lot of people who know what they're talking about are well sourced, really, really high in it. And yes, like if you look at it, the numbers aren't gaudy. If you watch him play, the guy just has it, right? Even as a true freshman on a dying football team, he went in there, went into Baton Rouge, or I'm sorry, they hosted LSU and they got a win there. And it was
Top five
very, very
team.
top five team who was going to the SEC, won the SEC West that year. So Wigman, like you said, he's going to be a guy that's really going to move up the quarterback rankings in the SEC and also nationally. And then obviously the depth there, which is why they're on this list because they do have. If something if something happens, like Wigman gets hurt again, or Henderson gets hurt, you have depth there in guys that you like, not only in the short term but also in the long term in their development there. And
Yeah,
also, like,
and
yeah, I think I said
uh,
blind faith that they're just going to be getting better year over year with just a little better coaching.
yeah, and you look at a guy like Max Johnson who left in the transfer portal to go to North Carolina. I don't know that he's the second string quarterback on this team for next year if he had stayed. I don't know that he's the third string. I think he probably is third string. The experience, gives him a leg up on Marcel Reed. But in terms of guys I'd rather have in the quarterback room, I would take all three of these guys in the quarterback room, I think, for the future Texas A&M over Max Johnson.
And
Of
then
course,
1 year of
Max
Max
Johnson only has,
Johnson.
yeah, absolutely. So this is a
But
good
yeah,
quarterback room. Don't fool yourself.
yeah, and not to dog on Max Johnson any longer, but I do think like something he struggled with, which you saw last year and the year before that, and the year before that, like he struggled in pocket presence, right? And when you had a bad O line, like that did not help you. But I do think Henderson's pocket presence is a lot better, and it's getting better. Marcel Reed's was pretty impressive in that bowl game. Connor Wickman, it's better than Max Johnson's, but he just stands in there and just takes hits, and you like to see him get the ball out a little bit quicker. And I think that's what you know Colin Klein can get out of him in terms of taking him in that next step and to be able to put together a full 12 game healthy regular season.
Absolutely. Let's move on. Let's talk about Colorado. We're not going to talk about their quarterback room. We're talking about their wide receiver room, and it is loaded. It is loaded. And you know what? And saying this in spring is pretty dangerous, right? Because you never know who's going to emerge, especially in college football. You see new names pop up every single year, right? But the dangerous thing to say is this NFL draft an unprecedented level of talent at the wide receiver position coming out. I don't know that there will be elite wide receivers in college football next year, but I don't know. You don't know who they're going to be, right? And you don't know how many of them there are. There might not be that many of them. There might not be that many wide receiver rooms that are as elite as some of the ones that we saw last year. I mean, there were some nutty elite wide receiver rooms last year. Where teams that are two wide receivers are going to get two, three wide receivers are getting drafted in the NFL. This is a case where two, three wide receivers on this team might get drafted in the NFL. Not necessarily next year, but over the course of time. You're looking at a guy like Travis Hunter, obviously. Okay, duh. One of one talent right there. Will Shepherd coming over from Vanderbilt. Very
Awesome.
productive in that offense. And now London Humphreys sure was the more how do I say this? More
Moldable
promising,
future. He's a
higher
freak athlete. Leonard
upside.
Humphreys is a freak athlete. Will Shepherd, mega productive at a place that's just not productive and conducive for wide receivers.
Absolutely. And then we haven't even brought up LeJontay Wester, who, by the way, led all of FCS, or sorry, all of G5 in college football fantasy points of wide receivers. If you want to talk about productivity there at FAU over there with Tom Herman, that's nuts. That's just those three. And then Jimmy Horn was a very productive wide receiver for them as well last year, and he's coming back again this year. Not to mention, you also get Draylon Miller, Marion Miller. Um, I know you like Terrell Timmons.
Oh yeah, got 6'2", 220, 4.4 speed from NC State. A guy, just another, just like again, I don't know how Dion did it, and I think it's part of it is, hey, you saw Xavier Wheeler, you saw Travis Hunter last year, you saw Jimmy Horn, and maybe the plan is to play Hunter a little bit less on the wide receiver room because you have all these bodies. You don't need his presence there, even though it's probably a little bit better wide receiver than his cornerback. But regardless, like super valuable on the other side of the ball for you. I don't know how he did it in bringing all these talents there. I mean, everyone watched the USC game, right, with Marion Miller. Just went off in the second half. Kind of disappeared the rest of the year, but it's still in there for him
He
to
was a true
develop because
freshman.
he was a true freshman. And Traylon Miller, yes, he's a true freshman. What's the expectations? But another guy that Matthew knows all too well. Very, 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 very good player. And obviously, you mentioned the two transfers, and then just Jimmy Horn for throw him in there again. A guy we were high on last year coming out of USF, and a guy who was very productive when he was healthy last year for Colorado. And yeah, oh by the way, they have Dylan Edwards out of the backfield, who's also used as a slot receiver type guy, and Shador Sanders is there, and you know they're going to be racking up a lot of yards in that offense.
Yeah, it's just the way it's designed. And you know what's interesting? Like, can I just say that I think there's several more leaky secondaries in the Big 12 this upcoming year than maybe there were leaky secondaries in the Pac-12 last year.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I don't have the number of the teams in front of me, and I don't have Colorado's schedules in front of me, but I will say, look, maybe their offensive line again, another tape job, with transfers and a true freshman, Jordan Seaton, but this wide receiver group could go kind of nuclear this year, and Shedeur Sanders could go nuclear statistically again. He was already pretty nuts last year, and yeah, I mean, sure, you might not like what he says in the press conferences. You might not like Deion Sanders and what he says in the press conferences and how the team acts or whatever, but that is completely independent of the talent of this wide receiver room. This wide receiver room is loaded. It is
Mm-hmm.
loaded. I'm trying to think of like a more well-rounded, better wide receiver group in the country, and I don't know that I can. I mean, LSU's receivers room is going to be really good. Um, I don't know that I can. Ohio State
I
will be
don't
good. We already talked about them, but
I don't know many people that go six deep with guys that you just firmly believe are really, really impactful players for you.
yeah, I mean, Deion's
70.
loading his kid up.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And also, yeah, like you said, like the production is going to be there and the opportunities for these wide receivers. I think the O-line will get better than last year. Last year was just awful. It's going to be a little bit better. It has to be. You just have to have faith in that because they brought in some nice pieces actually on the O line, And obviously Jordan Seaton will be raw, but he's obviously physically
And on the
talented.
D line too.
Yep, yep, oh for sure.
Samuel
But
Okunlola, Quincy
I do
Wiggins.
I do think it'll help that Shador can actually get through his progressions because that's one thing he's really good at actually is getting through his progression. So you can start using four wide receiver sets and everyone can be an option. And that can really put some stress on the defense. Not only, oh, you have to cover for 2.5 seconds because our DN is going to get to him because he's going to blow by whoever they trot out there at right tackle.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see because a lot of teams I think down the stretch of the season played a lot of cover two shells, like they played back and basically said, "Hey, we're gonna give you the numbers in the box if you want to run the ball, Colorado." And they said, "No, we're not gonna do that, and we're also gonna basically demote our really good offensive coordinator." So I mean, look, a lot of question
Who's
marks
got a head
there.
coaching job right now, which
Who
is,
has who literally has a head coaching job? Just to gosh, I that's crazy. But the point is, this is a very talented receiver room. Whether or not they produce this year is it's up to them. It's up to that offense. I don't know how it'll work out, but it is loaded on paper.
yeah.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's move on. Let's go to running backs. Uh we could talk about Ohio State, but I want to talk about where let's talk about Minnesota. And I'm gonna let you kind of take this over. But this running back room is nuts. And it's highlighted by Darius Taylor, but I know that you and I know that it's not just Darius Taylor here.
No, and that was a real emphasis for the staff this year because if you saw them last year, right? And obviously they brought in some guys they thought were going to be good. They returned some guys that they thought were going to be good, and nobody stayed healthy. And part of that was due to you had a bust in a transfer guy that came in Sean Tyler, a guy that just couldn't hang on to the football, and so you couldn't give him carries. You had Bryce Williams go down with a big time injury. Zach Evans couldn't stay healthy. Darius Taylor when he was healthy was unbelievable. And if you we've done a video on rising star Darius Taylor, we've talked a lot about him. The guy is coming in his sophomore year. He averaged like 150 yards a game basically as a freshman in the games he was healthy and then obviously Jordan Newman, who was your RB5, who was a former walk-on guy that changed positions to be a running back to give you depth there. Oh yeah, he had 200-yard game against Michigan State, but then you fed him the ball 40 times and he was done the rest of the year because he was just so beaten up. And so that room took a lot of hits last year. And part of that was because your offense couldn't really get going passing the football, and your O line and your receivers were just not very productive. And your O line, was kind of better run blocking than it was pass blocking. So you fed your guys and they all got hurt. And so I think this year, a lot of the emphasis has been let's change that because it's a lot. And we don't want that happening. And so they brought in two guys from the high school ranks that they're pretty high on early enrollees, Jaden Wright and Oda Ojib Ojif. I'm gonna butcher it, but he's a really, really good player for Pennsylvania. And then you bring in two transfers and Marcus Major, a former high recruit, talented player from Oklahoma who's battled injuries in his career, and then Sia Bangura, a guy that we've been high on here on the Redshirt Sophomore from Ohio in the MAC, another guy uber productive for multiple years in the MAC to come and complement obviously Darius Taylor returning. We talk about short-term future, check. Darius Taylor is going to be a top three running back in the Big Ten. Sia Bangura, Marcus Major, Jordan Newman, all returning guys that are veteran guys that have played a ton of football, productive football that you really believe in. And then the future is there because Derek Taylor's so young. Bangura's got a couple years. Newman's got a couple years. You've got the freshman coming in that you really like. And yeah, I mean, a position that's very valuable in an offense like Minnesota's obviously is going to be going to be willing and put in spots to make plays and to shine. And it sounds like this year, this group really is ready for that with the depth that they have and the star power at the top end, making it one of the best rooms in college football.
And Bangura, I know he disappointed last year, definitely, but I think the offense as a whole disappointed. So I'm not lower on Bangura than I was last year at all. But I will say
And yeah,
it you have all
disappointing. He
these
still
running
ran
backs.
for 800 yards.
Yeah, 4.5 a clip or whatever it was. You have a loaded running back room, but in my opinion, and you might have a better opinion than me because you're more connected to this program than I am. Darius Taylor will still get 20, 25 carries a game. Is that crazy?
Yeah, I think the goal. I mean, they like to sit around. If in an ideal world, right? They talk about pair and a spare, and so you need a pair of running backs that you really like, and then a spare guy. This year, obviously, it's more like a pair and two spares and three spares and whatever else, which is kind of historically what it's been. But yeah, to be Darius Taylor gets 25, rushes a game. Bangura gets 8 to 10. Major gets 8 to 10. Newman gets 4 to 6. And however that divvies it up that way. And I think that's what they're feeling really comfortable with. And also, not to mention, we've talked about this in our Dylan Laube video when we broke down the running back from New Hampshire as a future draft steal in this upcoming draft. Max Brosmer, the quarterback coming in from New Hampshire, excuse me, there, a guy that really likes to use the check down. And so it's been an emphasis this offseason for Minnesota to be getting the running backs more involved. And Darius Taylor, a former wide receiver coming out of high school, Vancouver can catch the football. Marcus Major can catch the football. Guys like that, they can really get involved and also other ways to shine and maybe give them the ball in space or maybe take hits from safeties and cornerbacks and not linebackers and D linemen, every play.
Absolutely. This running back room is nuts. I would consider it, you know, it the top two isn't necessarily the best duo in the country, but in terms of like pure depth, like and talent overall, like this is one of the best running back rooms in the country. No questions asked. And this is a program that we know is going to use them, which
Yeah,
we love. If you're going to pile all that running back talent, just use it, man. Just use it.
they will. They will.
I love a good Minnesota team in late November that just pounds the rock.
I mean, if you're watching on YouTube here, you're probably watching Jordan Newbin's highlights at some point here. I'm hoping we can sneak it in. It'll be against Michigan State, and it'll be in late October, early November. And the guy had like 40 carries and 200 yards and two touchdowns. And yeah, he was best known for being Tyler Newbin's brother. And he comes out and does 200 yards on you just because he's an absolute tough to tackle in that cold weather. And I was there at that game. Trust me, it was cold.
Yeah, absolutely stud. Let's move on. Let's talk about another running back room for a team that we already talked about. And we're talking about them because for a different reason than we are talking about Minnesota. We're going to go back to Ohio State. We're going to talk about their running back room. Okay. It's not that necessarily they are four deep. All right, believe me, but it's not the same. They're not as four deep as Minnesota in terms of experience and production, at a Power Five level. I'm talking about Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins over there at Ohio State. A 1-2 punch right there. That is nuts. You have probably I, I don't know if Quinshon Judkins was the best running back in the SEC last year. I thought Jalen Wright was really good. That could have just been the benefactor of the offense that he was in. But if you're taking the best running back, theoretically, what would have been the number one running back probably heading into the SEC, and then probably the number one running back in the Big Ten heading into next year, you put them on the same team. That's nuts. That is nuts. Both those guys are going to go in the NFL draft. Who knows how high it's going to be? I mean, those guys, I don't know. I haven't done the NFL talent evaluation on either of those guys to like see like how it would translate. Like, would they be first round draft picks? But these are definitely day two guys, like minimum. Right now, if we were to take a draft of these guys next year, like they're day two minimum, right? I mean, these are very, very good, talented players. Now, that offensive line, it was a bit of a problem last year. You bring in Seth McLaughlin. I don't know that that exactly fixes everything. I know tackle is kind of an issue for you. We'll see how that works out for them. Travion Henderson, though, he has that giddy up though. Like on those outside zone plays, he has that giddy up, man. And people don't think that because he's kind of built a little like he's built wide, But that's just
Mm-hmm.
who he is. Like he's built wide. He is explosive with his cuts, and he can accelerate at a nutty level. And Quinshon Judkins was just unbelievable these last 2 years. So we know what he can do, right?
Yeah, I think the scary part too is how they can complement each other, willingly knowing that they want this and that obviously they want to be a part of the same running back room. And when you have two guys of that caliber who run that physically, who are that big, and you're running them in November, and they're both having fresh legs all year and all throughout the game, that is terrifying for these defenders that are going to have to, man up and try to tackle them. And hopefully you can wear down running backs. I mean, we've seen it in the past, but that's the beauty of this. You bringing in Quinshot Judkins, everyone's like, well, you don't need him. You have Trevor Henderson. No, no, it's nice to have. It's actually really nice to have because of you mentioned we talked about earlier with Will Howard and the emphasis on the running game. Obviously, Chip Kelly coming over, who's been a very, very good running game coordinator in his time in college football. Yeah, Trayvon Henderson, Quinshot Judkins. Yes, like we mentioned, yes, you lose Mayan Williams, you lose Chip Traina, you lose Dallin Hayden, guys that have been pretty good for you in the past, very talented players in their own right. But the high end talent that is there with Judkins and Henderson is too hard to resist. And and by the way, you also have James Peoples, another guy, high 4-star running
Yep.
back from Texas, a guy from San Antonio down there that people are high on as well. Short
Yeah,
term and long term future.
yeah, they've never had trouble developing running backs, that's for sure. So I would believe that James I would have a lot of reason to believe, based on historic performance of running backs at Ohio State, that James Peoples is probably a pretty good player. And if they needed to throw him in the game, that he would do just fine. I mean, if you remember, I mean, Chip Trayanum, I mean, yeah, sure, he came from Arizona State and he had played running back, but he was still pretty raw. Like he was a raw player. He played linebacker, like converting to running back. He goes in there in the spring game and just kind of dominates, because Traven Henderson was hurt, and Mayan Williams was hurt. I think both of them were actually hurt that game. And he kind of stepped up and he got some valuable carries down the stretch. And that was a guy who was a third string running back. Got valuable carries down the road. So yeah, we'll see about that. But that is a very, very talented Ohio State running back room because of its top two duo that they have there. Probably the best duo in the country. I mean, I can't. It's not even close. I don't think
No, I mean, I guess like other duos you like are Kay Allen and Nick Singleton, but like
it's not close.
Quinshot Judkins and Trevin Henderson are the two best running backs probably in the Big Ten, right? And maybe two of the top three in the whole country. I know there's some Taj Brooks truthers, and trust me, I'm one of them too. But like you've got two guys that are just super, super elite, high end, top tier running backs. That has to be worth something, right? And we think it is, obviously.
Absolutely. Let's move on. Let's talk about the last positional group that we're going to talk about before we get into some sneaky ones. Not necessarily the best, but sneaky ones. Let's talk about Georgia's tight end room. And we could have talked about the Georgia's tight end room every year for the last 5 years.
Jeez.
So, CD, who is it this year?
Well, so obviously everyone knows you lose Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington before that, and you've had some obviously high profile guys head out there. You even had at one point you had Eric Gilbert, who, if you're a college football fan, you know his tragic story and obviously bumping around and not quite living up to his potential. But this year it's going to be Oscar Dope and Benjamin Urosek and Lawson Lucky. And that's the beauty of this room is you've got three guys who each bring a little bit differently run blocking, pass blocking, and even like in passing catching the ball athletically, build wise, like a little bit something different to the table that you can really, really take advantage of. But Oscar Delp's the guy, right? He's the guy who waited his turn patiently, who's flashed in his own right. Super, super good run blocker. Obviously helps them with Branston Robinson and them trying to establish the running game. But he's also pretty effective in the passing game. Benjamin Urosek, guy, hasn't stepped on campus yet, coming over from Stanford. Matthew, I know you're super, super high on him. And part of the reason, only one of the bright spots of Stanford just a year ago. And then Lawson Lucky, former high recruit, played a good amount as a true freshman at Georgia in an already stacked tight end room and got some nice experience there. I know that staff is high on him.
Yeah, I mean, all Pac-12 player in Benjamin Urasek. I don't know if he's even on campus yet. Like, I feel like he's kind of in zero dark 30. He doesn't post on social media. I have had a tough time finding out if he's actually on campus, like what's actually going on with him. Like, is he going back to Stanford? I have no clue. I have no clue. This is all knowledge that I wish I had. But if he is on that team, that is nuts. Oscar Delp, like you said, really good. Really, really, really good football players. Had some nice highlights there. Yeah, sure, he was overshadowed a little bit by Brock Bowers. Okay. But he was very productive in Brock Bowers' absence. Not the same level of athlete that Brock Bowers is, but he's a very good tight end. Very, very good tight end. And there are other tight end rooms that we could talk about, and maybe there's some better tight ends out there than Oscar Delp. When you're too deep, the way that Georgia is with Benjamin Yurcek is a very nice receiving threat. Very, very nice receiving threat. And so is Oscar Delp. So are you going to get a lot of 12 personnel? Maybe. Kind of, you got some maulers up front. I mean, the running back room's not terrible. I mean, you could see a lot of 12 personnel for Georgia, you know,
Um,
and that's 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 not a bad thing. You don't see a
no,
lot of that in college football. Sometimes it's good when everyone's zigging, you zag.
and I really like Carson Beck underratedly with his back to the basket, right? Or off the play action fake. I think he's a pretty darn good quarterback off the play action, which obviously helps your whole offense. But yeah, I mean, you're a set guy, 1,300 yards at Stanford over a couple years. And yeah, just the way Georgia uses their tight ends in the past, we've seen them take advantage of really, really high end guys. And obviously, they have the talent there to do so. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like you said, everyone's zagging. Like tight ends are hard to find in the portal, and Benjamin Yurcek guy when he entered the portal, and we saw that we were like, whoa, that's a pretty nice guy for somebody, and ended up at Georgia, who didn't really need him, but they'll take him, and that's kind of the reality of Georgia football right now, where you're just stacking talent on other talent, and that's the way to do it in the transfer portal if you can, but it
Yeah,
doesn't
I
hurt.
forgot about that. I forgot about this running back room too. This is a very good running back room for Georgia. If you're gonna run a lot of 12 personnel and you're running with Branson Robinson behind and Trevor Etienne, could be pretty nuts.
Yeah,
I know Trevor Etienne got in trouble, but I'm assuming he'll be back because it feels like every Georgia player that has had driving incidents has been back.
I'm sure. Hopefully, he learns his lesson. Obviously, pretty scary what he did, but the fact that you lose Brock Bowers, who, by the way, was a unicorn at the tight end position, right? A guy that I literally took in our fantasy draft in the SEC because at wide receiver position, I took him in
Or
our
yeah,
pass catchers.
your flex position or whatever.
Yeah, we called it pass catchers, and I took Brock Bowers over everybody else, and yeah, I got hurt, kind of screwed me, but that's crazy that you can lose Brock Bowers, and that's how good we feel about Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky and obviously Benjamin Urasek once he gets there this summer.
Yes. Let's get into some sneaky ones, shall we?
Let's do it.
The first one I want to talk about, let's go back to quarterbacks. Let's talk about SMU. Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky quarterback room there. And now I'm not talking about like they're 3 and 4 deep, right? Like some of these other schools that we've talked about. I'm just going to talk about their 2 deep. Preston Stone and Kevin Jennings are solid quarterbacks, man. I know Kevin Jennings was he 2-2 as a starter when Preston Stone got hurt, or 1-2 as a starter.
He did
I
pretty
thought
good.
he, I thought he was fine, man. I thought he was fine. Uh, and Preston Stone, the jump up to the ACC, I think there might be some people that say, could be a tough jump for Preston Stone, but Preston Stone was remarkable last year. Remarkable last year. And Rhett Lashlee's got that offense absolutely buzzing. They got some good talent over there at the wide receiver position. They've been accumulating talent at the running back position. This is a team that's set up to do really, really well offensively. And I think either of these quarterbacks would be fine. Obviously, you would prefer Preston Stone. You saw there was a decline on the offensive side of the ball when Preston Stone's went out, or wasn't Preston Stone went out, but Kevin Jennings was also very effective.
Yeah, Preston Stone is not your average G5 quarterback. He was a blue chip, right, top 150 quarterback, top 150 player coming out of Dallas, Texas. You obviously keep him home at SMU. Massive win for Rhett Lashley when that happened back in 2021. Finally paid off for you last year when he got the reins, like you mentioned, was super, super productive in the AAC. Will it transfer to the ACC? Yeah, I think so. I really do. We talked about it before. Like, there's a good amount of corners being left the ACC, there's some exploiting to do in the back end and also in a conference where there's not a ton of talent at the quarterback position either. Cam Ward, a lot of people are high on. I am too. Love him. Other than that, is it Cade Klubnik? How does Grayson McCall transferred over to NC State. You've got a bunch of other question marks there. And to be honest, Preston Stone, I feel really good about. If you told me by the end of the year he was going to be the second best quarterback in the ACC, I would not be surprised at all. And if he goes down, I feel pretty darn good in Kevin Jennings to give you some nice starts like he did last year in the championship game. In the championship game, he played against Tulane against a pretty darn good defense and coaching staff, 19 to 33, 200 yards. Yes, he had one pick and two picks and one touchdown, but
But the two
on
picks
the on
were
the ground, yeah, he did
they
it on
were
the ground too. Adds that dimension to you as well. I love it. Yeah, I love it here. And that was as a freshman, right? So Kevin Jennings does some nice things for you.
yeah. So I guess he was 1-1 as a starter. Um, but yeah, I think he's fine. I think he could do it if he needed to. But like you said,
But
Preston Stone is really good, man. Preston Stone is really good
and
at
by the way,
football.
part of the reason why they're on this list too as a sneaky team is like it's pretty impressive for SMU to hang on to a guy like first of all Preston Stone, not only in high school but after this portal season. I'm sure people were calling him. I'm not quite well sourced in that area, but I know that a lot of teams that need a quarterback looked over at Preston Stones and sees the arm talent and the production in Rhett Lash's scheme. And it's like, right, we could use him, right? And they kept him back, and also Kevin Jennings to give you that depth and to round out the room. It's super, super impressive.
Yeah, and if you were worried about his injury, I mean, he broke his fibula. He's already back. He's rehabbed well. He's been
Yep.
throwing in practice. He will be back. All right, he will be back, and he is a good football player, man. He is a good football player. Let's get into another sneaky one. Let's move to the wide receiver aspect of this because I know we only had one wide receiver team that we want to talk about, but let's talk about a sneaky team. And we've talked about this team before, and specifically in regards to the wide receiver room as well. That is Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
They've sneakily acquired some talent there. Not only have they brought in talent, but it was a little disappointing. I thought that wide receiver room is going to perform better last year, and part of that was Taylor Shuck getting hurt and having to bring in Baron Morton. But did they upgrade is the question because you did lose some talent. You lost a wide receiver in the portal to Boston College. You lost one going over to Indiana. Actually, probably your two most productive receivers, but you bring
Two
in
most
Josh.
talented. Xavier
Yes.
White was technically the most productive, but I believe he's graduated.
Yeah, so you lose your three most productive receivers, and you're like, how is this a sneaky good team? Well, that's exactly why it's sneaky. That's
Yep.
exactly why this wide receiver room is sneaky. Micah Hudson as a true freshman, right? We know that there's a lot of hype that's building around there and a lot of projection, but you want to believe that as a true freshman, he can have an impact the way that he had an impact throughout his high school career. He was unbelievable, absolutely highly sought after. It was unbelievable win for Julian McGuire, getting Micah Hudson to come to Lubbock. How about Josh Kelly?
I,
I
I
love Josh Kelly.
I'm proud to say we're fanboys of Josh Kelly. Like everything he does, we love. We eat it up. And I watched a lot of Washington State last year, and Josh Kelly just popped every time they played, and he made Cam Ward look pretty darn good. And not that Cam Ward needed help, right? But Josh Kelly was so good. Another guy that we did a video on Josh Kelly, right, in the transfer portal, and we were like, how did he not have more going on? And if he did, how did Joey McGuire convince him to come? Because that was super, super impressive. Because Josh Kelly would be an immediate upgrade over a ton of playoff ready teams this year.
Yeah. And if I know me, as I'm editing this in post for the YouTube channel, I know for a fact ahead of time that I'm pulling Josh Kelly highlights from Oregon State, and y'all are watching him right now. Just it's spectacular catch after spectacular catch. He's a good route runner, solid hands. He's just a good football player, man. Really good, really underrated. We'll see if Baron Morton can get him the football this year. We'll see what that offense can do. But regardless, I think independent Caleb Douglas, I like a lot. Coy Eakin is a guy who produced for you a little bit last year, and at least he's familiar in that building and knows the offense. I think this is a sneaky wide receiver. Not the best. It might not even be top 20. Who knows? But this is the wide receiver room that I don't think anyone's talking about that we wanted to talk about. And it's so sneaky because you lost all of that production last year, right? And of course, you're talking to the guy who was insanely high on a particular receiver on that Texas Tech team last year. And he underperformed a little bit, but I am willing to buy more Josh Kelly stock. I'm willing to dump that stock and buy all of the Josh Kelly stock. If you're selling Josh Kelly stock right now, I will buy it. I will buy it. And I'm not just saying
Absolutely.
like from a production standpoint, I think like NFL teams should really give this kid a look. I think they should really give him a look.
And also just an impact of your offense to have a just uber reliable receiver to open up Taj Brooks in the running game and to give Baron Morton, who was a young quarterback last year, an experienced quarterback, some help. And he comes in year two, being the guy after coming in for Tyler Shuck after being injured. They move on from Shuck. Obviously, Baron Morton steps in, a guy that McGuire very, very high on, right? Looking to make the next step. And also, I'm going to throw two more names out there for you. Dre McCray, I like a lot, who had 30 catches for you last year, did this nice things, and Brady Boyd, a guy that's another very reliable hands for you there. Yes, he hasn't gotten a ton of production, but I think he's going to have a nice year this year. A guy, if you remember, went to South Lake Carroll, where Quinn Ewers teammates with him there. Obviously, started at Minnesota, went to Texas Tech, did some nice things at times for both schools. So the depth is there, the top end talent with Kelly, and then the the untapped ceiling that is Micah Hudson that can really elevate this offense. No wonder why they're a sneaky team, right? And yeah, I'm glad you throw them in there because they need to be talked about a little bit more and what they can do. And like we mentioned with Colorado and their wide receiver room, the Big 12 does not have the best cornerbacks, right? And so there are defenses to be susceptible to this offensive attack. And I think Texas Tech can have a real nice year with this wide receiver core.
I agree 100%. Let's talk about our last sneaky team of the day. Let's talk about Tulane's wide receiver room. Yeah, sure, they lose Chris Brazzell, but I know you, CD, you absolutely love this wide receiver room. Would you like to get into it for us? And it's put together by transfers.
Yeah, guys that when I entered the portal, I was like, wow, that's a pretty tough loss for these teams. I really like these receivers. You bring in Mario Williams, right? Formerly from Oklahoma, went to USC, did some really, really nice things at both spots. Didn't quite put it together, and you have the year we thought he was going to have last year, but doesn't mean the talent's still not there. There's a fourth year player, former 5-star recruit, I believe. Tulane has got to be just thankful to have him, right? So and then also Shaz Preston, a guy that I believe, don't quote me, but I believe he's from the New Orleans area or from Louisiana. Yeah, he's from Louisiana, St. James, Louisiana. So super nice to bring him home. And a place like Tulane we talked about with John Summerall there now, like you can attract some homegrown guys that went elsewhere and maybe got buried on the depth chart for a year or two, but can come back and be a homecoming for you and really produce for you in year three, year four. Chaz Preston, Mara Williams, and Keith Brown, man, guys that I mean, obviously, yeah, Jaquan Jackson, Lawrence Keys, big losses too, as well. But Keith Brown's there. Again, sleeper rooms, really, really nice job. Really, really nice recovery from Summerall, who lost some high end players and other productive seniors.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of new faces in this wide receiver room. But like you said, there's some serious talent there. Guys that have produced, you know. Did you already talk about Yul Keith Brown?
Not a ton, but I did touch on him. Yep.
Yul Keith Brown's a player that came from Texas A&M. He's from Florida. Didn't really see a ton. He saw some action that first game. He actually had like a giant touchdown in that first game that Haynes King started in against Sam Houston State. Kind of disappeared after that. He's pretty solid though. Does the things that you want to be. He does a lot of things right. You know, not necessarily that he's an absolutely elite athlete or that he's better. I'm not going to say he's not more talented than Mario Williams. He's not more talented, I think, than Shaz Preston, but um, he's a solid football player, and I think he can do well in that wide receiver room once again. Yeah, I mean, 33 catches, 391 yards, 2 touchdowns for them last year. I mean, he just might improve on that. He just might improve on that mark once again.
Yeah,
So
you also bring in two guys, Therese Taylor and Jalen Griffin, two guys coming up a level. I guess Griffin was from, I believe, UCF and from UCF, and then Taylor's or Trainer, I'm sorry, is from Idaho and I believe Western Kentucky before that. But two guys that are 6'3", over 200 pounds, kind of brings you a different body in that room than your Mario Williams and your Shaz Prestons are a little bit more speedster, get them in space and whatnot. So you've got that nice give and take there. And by the way, we didn't even touch on Ty Thompson, right? A guy, former 5-star quarterback from Oregon, and just never saw the field, kept getting beat out by these older quarterbacks. And then obviously Kai Horton's there, who's got some experience as well for Tulane. But yeah, this wide receiver room, like you mentioned, pretty darn good.
very. Thank you guys so much for checking out our best position groups for 2024 season as of spring because things are subject to change with the transfer portal coming up pretty soon here. Point is, thank you guys so much. If you like the content, like the video, that's of course the rule that we have here. You have to do it. Not many of you actually push the like button, which is pretty wild. Actually, the most amount of likes we get are on these long form videos where we actually tell you to like the video. So thank you guys for actually listening. So I appreciate you guys there. Make sure you subscribe too if you want to catch more content. NFL draft is in 15 days. Like from when we're posting, it'll be 14 days. We're gonna be pumping out some stuff, especially next week. Next week, schedules open up a little bit for us. We're gonna get more mock drafts out there. We're gonna get more stuff out there. We love it because we got to get you guys our best bets too, because we absolutely rake when it comes to NFL draft season. So thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys comment. Let us know what teams did we miss. Were there any players we were missing on some of these particular lists? Some sneaky ones. If you guys are in tune with the program, like, hey, who's the guy that's popping out in these spring practices that we haven't read about? Let us know. CD, what do you got?
No, I enjoyed doing this content. I hope we highlighted some guys and some teams that maybe didn't think about, but also highlighted the guys that deserved to be highlighted as well. And had a lot of fun creating this list and putting this together for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Absolutely. We'll see y'all in the next one.